You know it.
You tell the story.
You tell the whole damn world.
This is bear territory.
Go Bears, baby. Let's go.
Let's go. It's another great day to be a bear. Welcome to Tell the Whole Damn World, the podcast for Golden Bear fans. If you're like us and are unabashedly and unapologetically all about Cal, then you found the right place. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Reza Serafinejad, and as I always like to say, if you're associated with the University of California, you're one of the luckiest people on this planet. Never forget that. It's the last day of March 2025, and for today's episode, we're going to do things a little differently. Ahmad and I will first talk about our upcoming interview with Ron and Stephanie Rivera, which will be released as a special standalone episode this week. And then we'll get you updated on Cal Sports before ending with our weekly history lesson from Leslie Mitchell. This week, we're going to learn all about the world's very first women's college basketball team, and I'll give you a little hint. It involved a pretty well-known university located in Berkeley. Without further ado, let's get right to it. All right, everybody. Well, we're going to try something a little bit new with this episode. And admittedly, it was probably a little overly optimistic considering how busy both Ron and Stephanie Rivera are right now with his recent hiring and coming back to Cal. So I know I shot my mouth off and said that he was going to be on Monday's episode, but we're actually going to be doing that interview Monday evening. And so the current plan is for us to release this episode, which you'll see with Ahmad and me and our Cal History segment with Leslie Mitchell. But then we're going to release the episode with the interview with Ron and Stephanie Rivera on Wednesday this week. So it's a little special case. And, you know, I would also think that I've heard from a lot of people out there that our podcasts are maybe a little too long. And I get that because we like to talk and there's a lot of stuff to talk about. So we're going to chop it up and these episodes will be shorter. And the interview with Ron and Stephanie figures to be long as it is because there'll be a lot to talk about. And so it probably makes more sense to chop this up into smaller pieces. And if you all like that, we can maybe do something similar in the future with shorter podcasts. So that's something to consider. And one last thing I'll just say is, yeah, it's a new look for the podcast and new hairstyle for me. Trying to look a little younger, and we'll see how it all goes. So
it's working. It's working. I was like, who's this kid? Who's this kid on here?
53 years young. Well, hey, Ahmad, I know you and Ron in particular have a lot of history going back to your playing days because you both played under Roger Theater and Joe Cap at Cal. And so I think, you guys know each other obviously pretty well from that time. And you guys have stayed in touch. I'll tell you, as a Cal fan, how incredibly excited I am to know that both Stephanie and Ron are going to be on the show this week.
Well, for me, it's twofold. I'm excited to have them. I'm excited to have them home. It's a homecoming, not only for me, but for Bear Territory for sure. This podcast enables us to tell the whole damn world. And we're getting it fresh. We are getting it right out, from as they say, from the farm to the plate, if you will. About what Bear Territory is all about, and they really exemplify that at the utmost. And I'm excited for it to happen. But what I'm really excited about, Rez, is I just want to share some gratitude as we've gone through this. I want to share my gratitude for you and your wife and your daughter and your cat for believing in you to take a moment to say, I'm going to push through with this. I'm grateful for you offering me the opportunity to partner with you, and I'm grateful for the work that you do behind the scenes that people just don't know. That makes this show a great show that has Bear family sitting on the edge of their seat every day. So I just say blessings to you. Your haircut looks great. I think it knocked about 5 years off you. I didn't recognize you when you came on, but I love you, man. I appreciate you.
Man, I gotta say, thank you so much, Ahmad. I mean, this whole thing would never have come together without you. And, it all really started there with College Game Day. And I've always known the Bear Territory chant, the Bear Territory cheer. But to see you up there on that stage with Game Day, yelling that out, that just was the spark that just reignited all of this passion that I've had for the University of California, after all these years. And then, the vision for all of it kind of came together piece by piece. I dreamt about it, kind of came to me in a vision. And I just figured, nobody else out there is doing something like this. I mean, people talk about sports and sure, current teams, and yeah, and that's all great and for sure. And there are people who do it a lot better to really analyze everything and play Monday morning quarterback, but to have a show which really just spotlights and talks about all these people who have this tremendous passion for Cal. That's what, for me, it was all about. And I knew right from the get-go that I had to somehow, because I didn't know you. I'd met you in passing at some event and shook your hand. You had no idea who I was, and I was just like in awe of you. But then to
Here's an
finally
autograph, kid. Here's an autograph. Go Bears, last, right? Yeah.
That's right. But to actually get to meet you and to know you, like we've developed this strong friendship now. I mean, every day I literally wake up and I'm just so appreciative and grateful for your friendship and for everything that you bring to this podcast. I love our partnership. I love where we're going with it, and just tremendously grateful to all of our listeners out there as well for giving a damn and tuning in and helping us get the word out there that the University of California is not to be dismissed.
No.
When all this conference realignment stuff is going around and people are wondering about the fate of our athletic program, I feel like there's so much to be tremendously excited about with our new chancellor, Rich Lyons. And you take a look at the recent hiring of Ron Rivera and what that means in terms of the commitment that the university is making to our football program, which, as we all know, drives everything else when it comes to the athletic programs that the university supports. So I couldn't be more excited and happy about the direction of the program. I couldn't express more appreciation for you, Ahmad, and your family. And thank you so much. Gotten to know one of your sons, and he's an awesome guy too. Apple does not fall far from the tree. And I love the energy that you bring to this. So thank you so much.
Well, I tell you, brother, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. And just to give a bigger perspective on the Bear Territory piece, what they didn't hear on air, but the students heard that day, the Bear Territory may have been birthed from the 1982 team. That synergy, that energy, that just stick to it, that motivation, that drive to win, to be all you can be. But it also came from the experiences that we had collectively. And I mean, not only football, but being student athletes, the faculty there, the faculty that educates us to be the greatest people to come from out of universities and colleges across the land, to be the leaders amongst leaders. It came from the staff that supported us with resources to be successful, to learn how to get through bureaucracy of life. But it also came from every student who had the audacity, who had the hope, who had the drive to apply to the University of California, to dream that impossible dream for many, but that dream became a reality. The students, the faculty, the staff, and then that home we call home, us student athletes, that athletic department, to say, you are, who have proven to be qualified, the ones to be able to drive us to success, to be number one, not only in the classroom, but also in the sport that you participate in. That's what Bear Territory is all about. It's you, me, we, us together, bringing it to the mic, telling the whole damn world that this is Bear territory. So I want to give a shout out to the university overall, what they've done, the experiences, and all the experiences are not the same, but they're learning experiences that help build a great foundation to be able to see whatever comes in front of us and be able to pivot and to be successful in life. And that's what it's all about. So,
That's right.
amen to the athletic department and what they've done, and to the great University of California at Berkeley.
That's right. And, we really couldn't have done this with all the help and support, too, that we've received from the coaches, who've been gracious enough to be on the show. We couldn't thank them enough for lending their time, especially in the middle of some of their seasons. And, some people have said to me, too, it's like, well, Rez, you probably should just focus on the people who are going to, get a lot of viewers. Like if you have a big name. And trust me, we will have some really big names on the show as we continue down this path and on this journey. Yeah. But I've also felt like, it's important to let Bear Territory know about all this amazing work that these other coaches are doing in these other sports that aren't as well known. And Ahmad and I have talked about this. As we move forward and we get closer to football season, we will have more football-oriented stuff. And I also want to say that one of the original visions that I had for the podcast was that it wasn't only going to be sports related. And I know we definitely are very sports related. But if there are members of the faculty and professors on campus and people who care deeply about the University of California, we want to hear from them too. We would love to have them as guests on the show, because it isn't just about the sports. The sports is what brings people to the front door. Those are the people who are going to come back to the university. And I think with our leadership now, with our new chancellor, they get it. They understand that sports is what brings the community together and cares more deeply about the university. So,
yeah, 100%. The people we've had on, the guests we've had on, have been spectacular, without a doubt. But it's not just football. It's not just basketball. It drives the revenue. It drives the cameras. It drives the lights, camera action that you see every day, and drives the fans to come running to see who's going to be the next Hall of Famer, who's going to be the next star in that particular sport. But the reality is, as we all know, at the university, the women have had tremendous teams across the board. We have great Olympians in the women's sports. We have great athletes in women's sports, and amazing coaches who came from Cal, started at Cal, went on to do great things, and then came back because they love it, Cal, to be the coaches they are and driving and leading our teams to success. Those are the teams we want you to go see. We want you to go see those other sports, the swimming, the field hockey, the baseball, the rugby. Go see them. Go see ice hockey. Baddest jerseys in the land, baby. You got to text somebody. Text somebody. I want to see you in the penalty box, Reza. That's where I want to see you. Come on, missing teeth, new hairstyle. You'll be doing something for Invisalign or something because your teeth getting in there. But that's the joy of Cal. There's so many things. Never a dull moment at the University of California at Berkeley. So we've had some great guests, but they're just going to get better. Here's another thing that you mentioned. If there is a professor, if there's a staff person that you had a great experience, tell us about it. We have one of the greatest historians on our show. They can find the nitty-gritty stuff. They can get back behind the scenes and find out where that person came from. And you'll find that there's a connection to that person being Cal community-based, has given us the ability to keep going through those tough times when Cliff Notes weren't enough, when Blue Books were running out, when you couldn't, in my day, you had to have a registration card for each class. That person was there to help you out. Tell us those stories so we can tell the world what that was, your experience at Cal, and how it's made you successful in life. And when life's gotten dingy on your sleeve, you've been able to shine because you've been the Fiat Lux at your job.
That's right. That's right. Well, yeah, I mean, one of the things that I feel is important to point out is that the whole purpose of this podcast is to kind of give everyone who is associated and affiliated with the university a tremendous sense of pride in being associated with the university. And all these great people, these movers and shakers, like you say, these kings and queens who have gone on to do all these great things in the world. And, we all should feel that sense of pride. And the podcast is about basically trying to help build and foster a more connected Cal fan community out there.
Absolutely.
And we feel really good about the direction and the journey that we're on. I wanted to say too, we're closing in on 20 episodes now, which is kind of hard for me to believe. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when we release this I believe will be episode 19, and then we have episode 20, which will be with Ron and Stephanie Rivera. And yeah, as we look forward to that episode, that interview with Ron and Stephanie,
here's a participation trophy. You'll be able to get the trophy for your 20th episode. I'm trying to hold off, Reza, but I wanted to present it to you now for the great, tell the whole damn world participation 20th podcast. Reza certified. Thank you. There you go.
That's awesome.
My lady always tells me, you can't keep a surprise. I always know when the surprise. I was sitting on my hands. I was like, I got to pull the trophy out. There you go. Congratulations.
There we go. Well, yeah. And I mean, this, as we look forward to Ron Rivera in particular, with the fact that he's a 2-time AP NFL Coach of the Year. Okay. I looked into this a little bit. There are only 13 people in the world who have received that honor multiple times. Wow. That's it. That's a pretty short list, right? Wow. There have been a lot of great coaches in the NFL. So that's really saying something. And, his wife, Stephanie, but I looked into her because, obviously Ron gets all the headlines. But do you know Stephanie Rivera?
Look here. Let me tell you something. Not only was I on campus with them, right, as a student athlete, I then came back in August of '84, and I was an academic advisor. So I had this sort of pendulum swing of seeing them around while they were doing a thing. So this dynamic duo, these are superheroes, not only in the classroom, not only in their sport, but great philanthropic people.
That's right.
The Berkeley Foundation. Stephanie's a member of the Berkeley Foundation. We work together. I'm on the Alumni Association. We have the gala coming up for the alumni, the Achievement Awards for the university. So we've been working together over the years, and it just doesn't stop. So it's no shock and no surprise. Talk about March Madness. This is the March Madness right now. This is the Final Four for us. It's going to be you, me, Stephanie, Ron. That's the Final Four, baby. That's the Final Four, baby. It's going to be a great show. Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go, Ron.
You got me fired up, Ahmad. Let's do it.
Let's go, baby.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to buy some Tiger Balm now. I just think I twisted my
All right. Well, thank you,
I haven't
my
been
man.
that fired up. Well, look, I haven't been that fired up since game day, right? In such a way, because this just brings it full circle.
That's right.
360 degrees. And we're looking forward to a great show. Again, we thank you all for everything you all have done, the recommendations. But you tell us that we need to make it shorter, and we get it, because that is the template for podcasting. And yet, if you flash back on your years at Cal, and you flash back where you are in your life today, and you're walking down the street, or you're getting on a plane, or you're in another city far away from home, and you see this, or you see this, or you see that golden, and you say to somebody who you don't even know, "Go Bears," and they respond back to you, "Go Bears," it is a feeling like none other.
That's right.
None other. And so we're here just to tell the whole damn world this is Bear territory.
Love it. Go Bears, my brother.
Go
Talk
Bears,
soon.
brother. Love you all. See you all soon.
Go Bears. Love you. I love how Ahmad brings so much energy and positivity to each episode. He's such a great co host. Now, before we bring Leslie on, let me try to get you up to speed on what's happening in the world of sports. First up, congratulations to the men's swimming and diving team. They finished number 2 at the 2025 NCAA Championships. That's the 15th consecutive year that the Golden Bears have finished in the top 2. That's an absolutely outstanding achievement by our student athletes and head coach Dave Durden. The number 5 women's water polo team beat both number 10 Indiana and number 15 Michigan on the road. They're now 15-3 this season. The men's and women's tennis teams continue to play lights out. The number 10 men are now 16-2 this season, 8-2 in the ACC after beating both Boston College and SMU on the road. They've won 9 straight. And the number 17 women crushed Florida State 4-0 in Tallahassee to improve to 10-4 overall, 7-0 in the ACC. They've also won 9 straight and play Miami today in a match that was postponed. The softball team ran into a buzzsaw at Clemson, dropping all 3 games in the series. The Golden Bears are now 25-10 overall, 6-6 in conference. And the baseball team dropped 2 of 3 on the road at number 18 Louisville. But their win on Saturday was pretty damn special. The Golden Bears came back after trailing 10-7 after 5 innings, scoring the final 7 runs to win 14-10. They're now 15-12 overall, 6-6 in the ACC. And don't look now, but it's rowing season. The men's crew team is number 2 in the nation, and the women are ranked number 8. They both just wrapped up the San Diego Crew Classic, and we'll be sure to keep an eye on them both as the season moves on. And finally, this next weekend, all eyes will be on the number 6 women's gymnastics team in the Tuscaloosa Regional and the number 1 seeded varsity rugby team in the West region of the National Collegiate Championships. We wish both teams the very best of luck. Up next, considering we're in the middle of March Madness and this episode is being released on the last day of March, Leslie Mitchell and I close out Women's History Month with a bang and talk all about the world's very first women's college basketball team.
This week in Cal history.
You can probably tell from the smile on my face just how happy I am every time we get to sit down with Leslie Mitchell. She is, well, we talk offline before hitting the record button. I got to tell you, she always has me laughing and has me just in such a great mood. And it's always a wonderful joy to have her on the show. For those of you who don't know, Leslie Mitchell, class of 1981, is a third-generation Cal alum and lifelong Golden Bear fan who writes articles about notable people associated with our university. You can visit her website, calbearshistory.com, or follow her on Twitter, also known as X, under Cal Bears History, where she posts stories of interesting students, faculty, and alums. We love having Leslie as part of the show. She's a wonderful resource when it comes to learning more about people associated with our university who have gone on to do great things in this world. Today, as our continuing effort to shine a light on Women's History Month, we're going to learn about the world's first women's college basketball team. And of course, it was at Cal. Welcome again to the show, Leslie.
Well, thank you, Reza. And I appreciate your kind words as always. I know you love it when I pretend when we're offline and make you rush around saying, oh my God, something's gone wrong with the sound.
Yeah, you really had me going that time. That was a great one.
Yes. Yes, the very first college women's basketball team. I don't think many people are aware of that fact, that it was the University of California in Berkeley. Of course, as everyone knows, the inventor of basketball was James Naismith, who invented it at a YMCA in Northampton, Massachusetts in the fall of 1891. Within a couple of weeks, there was a woman from Smith College who was basically a PE teacher there who heard about it, a woman named Cinda Berenson. And she thought it might be interesting for her students to play that game. So she took the train from Northampton, Massachusetts to Springfield, Massachusetts, and took a look at a basketball game there, talked to Mr. Naismith, and she took it back and started playing basketball, intramural basketball at Smith College in March of 1892. So the women's game was immediately followed on the men's game. And in fact, the women's game really is what took off. Basketball is really a women's sport in the 1890s.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that was really interesting to me. And we'll talk about this a little bit later on at the end of the show. But Leslie does a tremendous job of doing all this research and wrote this wonderful article that we'll tell all of you about, where you can find it on her website at the end of the show. But yeah, it's really surprising to me to have learned that really it was the women who were the ones who were at the beginning and the genesis of this sport, and the men didn't play it until far later at Cal. And I guess we'll get into that a little bit, but we're talking about only a few months after Naismith actually invented the sport that the women at Cal started to pick it up. Is that right?
It was about a year.
About a year, okay.
Well, it was, 10 months, 11 months, it spread like wildfire across the country, this new game, which is hard to imagine now, a brand new sport suddenly just taking over. But I guess, it was a different world, but it did spread, and the girls at Berkeley heard about it and they wanted to play it. There was they had what they called a physical culture professor named Walter McGee, which basically would be their PE or whatever you want to call it, but it was called physical culture.
Physical culture sounds very erudite. Sounds good.
It sounds very Victorian, which is what it was. And he learned about the game, and he got a group of women together at Cal and taught them how to play the game as best they could from the printed rule book that Cinda Berenson had put out. And by the way, at that time, it was so different from what it is now, as you can imagine. The court was divided into 3 segments, and there was 9 players on a side, and 3 players could only stay in each of the 3 segments of the court. So there was under one basket was a segment, then the center of the court was a segment, and then the other basket was a segment. And you couldn't, if you were one of the 3 designated for one segment, you couldn't move over into the others. You had to pass the ball. There was no dribbling. You could only run 5 feet, and then you had to pass the ball. There was no backboard.
And that, full stop right there. No backboard. I guess that probably explains the exceptionally low scoring games that were played in that era. Because I can't even imagine.
It's hard to aim to where you don't have any perspective. And boy, you better not miss, because there's no backboard to help you bounce it in.
Right.
Also, you were only allowed to use one hand to shoot. So no backboard and only one hand.
Makes it quite a bit more challenging. I'll tell you, somebody like Steph Curry might have a little bit more of a challenge without a backboard. I mean, that's pretty tough.
He could probably hit a few shots, but I don't think he hit quite as many as he does, one-handed and no backboard. It was a very different game. It was still the beginnings of the sport, and this is how it was played generally. I mean, it wasn't just women who played. I mean, there were men playing the game in other parts of the country, but not really in college. Football was the end all and be all in college at that point. And baseball was popular, and rowing was a big sport and all of that. But basketball, it had a harder time finding its way with the men. But the women at Cal, they were excited. They wanted to play. And Coach McGee, who I guess you could call the very first Cal basketball coach, he taught them the game, and they challenged a local prep school called Miss Head's School, which the building is still there. It's on Durant Avenue, right next to the campus. And it was, they were like high school, basically, 18-year-olds. So they came over to the Berkeley campus and they played the very first game between a college team and an outside opponent. So the first time a team represented a college not just in women's basketball was the University of California Golden Bears. Although they weren't even the Golden Bears yet, because it was 1892 and they didn't become the Golden Bears until 1895. And
I wonder what they called themselves. Do we have any idea what they called themselves back then?
The papers all refer to them as the Blue and Golds until they got, well, and we'll talk in a later episode about how they got to be the Golden Bears, I'm sure. So they played at the old Harmon Gym, which had been built in 1879, and I believe was the fourth building on campus.
And that used to be where Dwinelle Hall is today, right? Wow.
It was torn down in the 1930s. But and then the new Harmon Gym, which is now been converted into Hospavilion, was built also in the 30s. So they played the game there. Unfortunately, Cal did lose 5-4 the very first game. But what's fascinating about it is it was women only allowed to attend. No men were allowed to be there. But there was this guy named Albert May, who was a reporter for the San Francisco Call newspaper. And he got there early and hid somehow, concealed himself and sort of, I don't know, peeped through blinds or whatever and watched the game. And he wrote this article. I mean, on the one hand, it was great that he was writing an article to give some publicity to the fact that this new thing that had, by the way, it was the first basketball game ever played in the Western United States, men's or women's. So this brand new sport, but he was so condescending about these women. I think I sent you some tidbits from his article. He called them like delicate little maidens and claimed that they were wearing bathing suits, and although they were wearing basically gymnasium outfits, and just it's almost makes you shudder that's how they were talked to.
I mean, even in that era, I guess it was just more prevalent, to be sure, but just focusing on the aesthetics and it's just little.
And how their bodies looked, and it was very, it was. So, but they played. That was the first college basketball game, you can argue, ever played, although it was not with another college. So Cal continued to play intramural, and they occasionally would play like a YWCA or somebody, but then. In 1895, Stanford, which had only been founded like 4 years earlier, they got their women down there decided to have a team. And they started playing a lot of games against, again, YMCAs and high schools and what have you. And they finally decided they were good enough to challenge Cal. At that point, Cal's team had kind of gone defunct. So they had to round up players and get their team going again, which they did. So the game was set for April 4th, 1896, at the Page Street Armory in San Francisco, which burned down in the earthquake and fire 10 years later. And it held about 700 people. It was a sellout. Again, women only. I think after that article from Mr. Albert May that they probably really didn't want any men there being salacious. Only women allowed. It sold out 700 seats, 50 cents a ticket, which was quite a price in 1896. And by the way, the money went, or a portion of the money went to support the men's track team, which was going to take a trip to the East Coast. So I think it's interesting that the very first women's basketball game, the profits supported the men's team.
I think that's pretty interesting, and to think that the women were actually helping to support the men's programs back then and were profitable.
The game was a little bit what you call low scoring. As we pointed out, it was hard to score back then.
Well, and each basket was only worth 1 point.
1 point, correct.
Right.
And at the half was a very thrilling 1-1 tie. And the players, I love this little detail. During halftime, there were 2 20-minute halves, so has stayed the same. But during the half, they sat on the floor of the arena and snacked on orange slices. I don't. Oh, and by the way, the Cal coach wasn't allowed to be there because he was a man. And Stanford said, no, if you're going to ban men, that has to apply to your coach too. So he wasn't allowed to be there. So I guess they couldn't have had a dramatic halftime speech if the coach wasn't there. The second half, it was a little disappointing for Cal. A Miss Frances Tucker from Stanford got fouled, and she hit a free throw. And so the final score was Stanford 2, Cal 1. Alas.
Darn it. Stanford.
Ah. Yeah, well, that happens. But the great thing about the game was the attention it got throughout the Bay Area. All three of the big San Francisco newspapers and the Oakland Tribune, they all sent women reporters to the game. One of the most famous was a woman named Mabel Kraft, who was the first woman editor at the San Francisco Chronicle. And she attended. She was a Cal alum.
Yeah, and I think I remember reading that when she graduated from Cal in 1891, I believe, she really should have won the university medal awarded to the top graduate in a class, and she apparently was denied that honor because apparently it was only going to be given to men at that time.
Yeah, it had previously been open to women, but the new president of the university that came in declared, no, it's only for men now. But what I do love about that story is that the man that was supposed to then get it, the number 2 person, was a man named Joseph Garbers, and he said no, he wouldn't accept it because he didn't think he'd earned it.
Sure.
So it went unawarded that year. There was no university medal. So good for him.
Mabel Kraft went on to not only be the editor, the very first woman editor for the San Francisco Chronicle, but then also was a very big force in women's suffrage and in fighting for the rights for African Americans, I think, in that era as well. So that's she certainly sounded like a real go-getter kind of person. I think that was a pretty cool thing.
And her articles in the Chronicle were great. They're fun to read. They're not quite like you read a sports article today. Of course, the prose is quite flowery and all of that, but she called it the first struggle in women's athletic ability. And that even though Cal lost, she felt like it had been a great blow for women's equality. And that's how it was seen by a lot of people at the time, that look at this. In fact, the players said, look, we have a game now that's just as good as those boys' old football. And, we are basically, we're equal to them. We have our own sport now. And it was, as I said, not only did it make all the papers, headlines, full page articles, not photographs because they couldn't put photographs in papers, but drawings of the game. But it also got covered. Mabel Kraft was a writer also for Leslie's Weekly, which was a national magazine. And so she wrote a big article about the game there. And it even got covered in the New York newspapers, who said, this is a new venture for women in college, that now they're going to have women's sports. And by the way, it wasn't just the first women's intercollegiate basketball game. It was the first women's intercollegiate sport of any kind ever played in the history of the world, as far as I know, certainly history of the United States.
That's pretty cool.
It's a landmark.
Yeah, that is very cool. I think that's amazing to think. And talk about that era and having that much fan support, a sellout crowd. That's all some pretty
Especially
cool
when
stuff.
You're only allowing in the women,
Right.
Presumably, well, there wasn't a bigger location to have it at, so that put the end of having more. But I'm sure if there'd been more seats available, they would have had more tickets sold as well. Yes.
Wow.
It was huge. The Stanford players took the train back to Palo Alto, and they were greeted by a huge crowd. By the time they got there, it was dark, so they had apparently torch-led parade from the train station. They got a note of congratulations from Mrs. Stanford, and they were awarded varsity letters.
Wow.
By Stanford.
Wow.
which were it was the only time that women were awarded varsity letters at Stanford until after Title IX was passed in the 1970s, saying that women were entitled to play varsity sports.
That
So,
is
yeah.
crazy, right? That is crazy to think that that much time passed. 80 years?
Well, and until it was made the law that they had to. And, we did even worse at Cal because we also did not award varsity letters until the 1970s when we were compelled to do that. But worse than that, I guess because our team didn't win, our women didn't get varsity letters for that basketball game. And a couple of years later, as the sport continued to be played, there was a vote at Cal. Should we award women basketball players varsity status? And the only people who were allowed to vote were people who had varsity status already. And of course, they were all men, and they voted no. So our women didn't get no woman at Cal got a varsity letter until the 1970s. But they continued to play the sport. They founded a league with Stanford in it and Cal and San Jose State, which at that time was called San Jose Normal School, which is a teacher's. It didn't mean that they're normal. It meant they were going to be teachers. That was the word. That was the word at the time. University of Nevada, Reno became involved in the league, and then also they added some like YWCA's and some clubs and so forth. So there was a regular league going for most of the rest of the decade. And Cal actually became the big powerhouse. They won the league several years running.
I was particularly amused by some statement that I guess it was the University of Nevada that had taken Stanford to task over their reluctance or unwillingness to allow the women to really recognize them as a
eventually,
sport,
actually,
right?
Stanford banned women's sports.
Oh, okay. So I got ahead of myself
2 years
a little
later,
bit.
yeah.
Right.
After the league had been going for a couple of years, the president of Stanford at that time, a man named David Starr Jordan, was vehemently opposed. They said it was deleterious to the women's femininity and to their physical well-being and so forth. And so they banned women's sports from the campus. I believe that was 1899.
Wow. And and so we didn't go quite that far at Cal, right? We didn't ban
we didn't ban it. We just didn't support it. Yeah.
Right. But to get back to my little comment about the University of Nevada, they had taken Stanford to task over this banning of the women's sports. And do you have that quote on you? That was
I do. Yeah, it was actually a student resolution that was passed by the Nevada student body.
Yeah, I thought it was particularly amusing.
It is pretty funny, and it's very sort of 1890s. Here was the resolution that, quote, let the girls play basketball, which is, by the way, hyphenated, basket and ball, two different words. Let the girls play basketball if they want to. Encourage and insist them in every possible manner. And if the misguided professors of Stanford University should say nay, nay, we shall call them a lot of bald-headed, long-whiskered, cross-eyed old billy goats, unquote. So good work for Nevada.
That's right. Exactly. I thought that's great. Yeah, that's a term you don't hear too often anymore, calling somebody a billy goat.
Plus with all that goes before it. Yeah,
right.
It's funny. It starts out kind of serious and then it kind of goes off the rails. Yeah.
So, and then one other thing, I guess, that was just particularly notable is that, you got to go all the way to 1907, right? When the men started having a real basketball team recognized by the university. And then when that happened, it was kind of like the end of the women competing, really, I guess, in basketball until Title IX came along. Is that right? Or there's still clubs?
They continued to play it on a club level. And frankly, even after Stanford banned women's sports, the women at Stanford made their own club team, and they called it the Palo Alto Club. They weren't allowed to be under the auspices of the university or to play on campus or whatever, but they found a location in Palo Alto to play, and they continued to be part of the league. So, they want, that's the thing that's so amazing. You know, a lot of people say, oh, well, women's sports are no big deal. Women don't care about sports and all. These women wanted to play. Even when they were banned from playing, they created their own club and they continued their own league. But what happened was whatever support the universities had given to teams kind of fell apart, and they didn't get any more support. They had to just become club sports. And even club sports today get a certain amount of university support, and you know, not a lot of money or anything, but they're like official student organizations. So they kind of had to do it on their own, and they did continue to play. I mean, they competed all the way through, you know, the 20s, 30s, 40s, but it was at a very low key, no support from the university.
Right.
Figure it out yourselves, girls, or we're not going to help you kind of level.
No,
going back to Nevada, though, there's a great story. They came down, they took the train down to Berkeley to play for the first time. And what I love is that, there was no place for them to stay. There was obviously no budget for anything. So the Cal players picked them up at the train station and took them, and they stayed at their homes the night before the game. And then they treated them to a luncheon before the game. Then they played, and Cal beat them 14-1, which was a nice, at that point, Nevada hadn't really played yet. They didn't really quite know what this game was. And the Cal girls by that time had been playing for a few years.
Sure. Well, 14 points in that era sounds like, wow, that's like a offensive explosion.
And a 14-1 win is, in any sport, that's a big gap. And then they came back the next year, even though they had gotten slaughtered like that. They really wanted to play, and they came back. And the next year they only lost by 7-3. So they had upped their game. But in that game, one of the Nevada players, actually, the game was so rough, she got her nose broken. And this created a sensation because the idea of women's sports being so rough that a woman could get her nose broken was kind of shocking. Even a newspaper in Nevada even reported that she had died, which was like crazy. No, she didn't. I came across that and I was like, what? Is that I had to go back and track it down, and I looked into the Nevada yearbooks and all of this, and no, she didn't die.
Have an obituary and everything. Died of a broken nose.
Yeah, it'd be a little funny. But it's just such a shocking thing, and particularly old Cinda Berenson, the woman at Smith College who very first started the game. She had written the rules to be extremely genteel. That there was to be you weren't supposed to try to snatch the ball away from another player or interfere with another player in any way. Can you imagine a game like that today?
God forbid if they perspire.
Oh yeah, no, that was considered shocking. That's one of the reasons the men were banned from the games, is it was considered shocking for them to see young ladies perspiring. Yes, but then you see, that was the East Coast deal. It comes out here to Berkeley and to the West Coast, and these girls, they're pioneer girls, and they were out there rolling around on the floor grabbing for the ball and getting their noses broken. So it really toughened up out here.
Sure sounds like it.
But yeah, it was unfortunate that great start was not allowed to really blossom. Even at Cal, again, there was a very negative feeling among the sort of conservative old professors that this is not feminine, and that women shouldn't be perspiring. They shouldn't be running around in scantily clad outfits and so forth. And scantily clad, when you see, I think there's a picture that I sent you of one of the players showing off her uniform, which a lovely UC on the front, which is great. But I mean, it covers like everything. It's like giant bloomers, and there's nothing showing.
That's right. Just goes to show, boy, what a difference in eras, right? And
which may be another reason why it was low scoring. I can't believe that it was easy to play in an outfit like that.
True. That's true.
The men finally started playing basketball at Cal in 1907, which was 11 years after the first Cal-Stanford women's game. So that's when it started to become more of a men's sport. And then the men just basically took over and dominated it, became a men's sport primarily. But up until that time, basketball, I would say, was arguably a women's sport much more than a men's sport.
I mean, yeah, that's just so interesting to me to think. And it's almost as if it were just ahead of its time in that era, given the way that men viewed women and expected women to behave, that
Well, and to be fair, a way of a lot of women viewed,
that's
women.
true.
There were these sort of societal norms of this is how it's supposed to be that a lot of people of both genders,
That's true.
just accepted as that's the way things are.
Right. But I mean, boy, we talk about a long dry spell between that era then and the 1970s with Title IX. Just kind of crazy to think when you look back. Well, I think this was a great topic for today, considering that we're in the midst of the NCAA tournament, and unfortunately our beloved Golden Bears are not continuing to play, but they had a wonderful season.
They had a great season. Yes.
Yeah, and we're
I'm
so
wearing
happy.
my T-shirt that I got the road to New Orleans. It says I bought that at the regional in Spokane in 19. See how old I am, in 2013 when the Cal went
Final
to the Final
Four run.
Yeah,
that's right.
And I'm fingers crossed we'll get back there.
That's right. Well, Coach Sharman Smith certainly has the team heading in the right direction.
Just to get off on and editorialize about the women's basketball team for a minute, I think we all have to be prepared that next year is going to be one of those rebuilding years because we lost a lot of really good players to graduation. True. So far, we don't have any, fingers crossed, so far there's nobody entered the portal. We'll see what happens. But Sharman showed amazing ability to get transfers in that are really strong. And we've got a 5-star point guard coming in as a freshman. So, but I think that takes a little while to rebuild, to reload. So let's not go crazy if they don't do this so well next year. But I see a lot of hope for the future of women's basketball.
Absolutely. I mean, it certainly has raised the profile of the Golden Bears women's basketball program to heights that we haven't seen in a little while.
Indeed.
And very excited to see what the next chapter holds for us. So, but hey, I wanted to just call everyone's attention to Leslie's website, where you can read an article about this very topic and also read all kinds of other wonderful articles that she's written about the past and the Golden Bears, and called CalBearsHistory.com. You can follow her on Twitter as well under that same name. And again, just
the article, if you're looking for it, is called "The World's First Women's College Basketball Team." So that's pretty straightforward.
That's pretty straightforward. Hit the nail right on the head. But I really appreciate your time here again today, Leslie. We always appreciate having you on the show, and thank you again, and go Bears.
Go Bears.
It's always great to spend a little time with Leslie. You can visit our website at tellthewholedamnworld.com and scroll down to the bottom to find a link to her website where you can read all of her incredible articles. That's going to do it for this episode. Please be on the lookout for our special episode with Ron and Stephanie Rivera, which will be released this Wednesday. Tell all your friends. If you direct them to tellthewholedamnworld.com, they should be able to pretty easily figure out how to stream our episodes or watch on YouTube. You can also follow us on X, better known as Twitter, under Win4Cal. That's Win, the number 4, Cal. And if you're so inclined, you can help spread the word about the podcast and buy some Tell the Whole Damn World bumper stickers for only $5. It's the perfect gift for all your Cal friends. Just go to our website, and if you scroll down to the very bottom, you'll find a link that takes you right there. The more viewers and listeners we have, the easier it will be for other Cal fans to find us. I say it all the time, but we sincerely appreciate all of you out there listening and watching. See you later this week. This podcast is about celebrating all things Cal and the prominent people who are passionate about the University of California. Do you feel Cal is the center of the universe? Do you bleed blue and gold? We want you to tell the whole damn world about it. Go Bears!